That's right. You heard the sound. This is now time for our restaurant reality, where we're going to give you the unbridled truth about the restaurant industry. And we're back on the air with Eric and Robin, and we're talking barbecue today, Robin.
And I think this was a fascinating show because we had the president of the National Barbecue Association as well as a local chef, and they were really willing to go out and tell you the unbridled truth themselves. Because the reality is that while we all love barbecue, it's become a staple in our backyards. Now it's hitting the mainstream, and chefs are introducing new flavors. There are some twists to putting a new barbecue restaurant up, right, Eric?
Yeah, we've learned a lot about different styles of barbecue, putting your own twist in it. Also, we learned about more organic farm to table is also tying into the barbecue business. So it's not the only old, stainless steel pan that, you whip out the tinfoil out of it, and you have, mac and cheese and some just, greasy corn and collard greens. And, this is what started it. But now we heard today about sides that are becoming a big thing. We heard Roy today talking about having a whole segment at their national convention about sides from famous chefs, Robin.
Right, but the reality is if you want to get into the business, you've got to remember something. Barbecue doesn't fit in every shopping center. And you can't just say, okay, I'm going to open a barbecue restaurant. This was a pizza restaurant before, and I'm going into that space. And the reason? You've got a smoker to contend with. And we have had many landlords over the past decade turn away some really great concepts, not because they didn't want them, they didn't believe that the barbecue would be successful, but maybe their insurance wouldn't allow a smoker on the premises, or they didn't want a second roof penetration to vent a second hood. So there are some very real practical concerns about why you may not be able to. So that's the reality side of getting into the barbecue business. Some other thoughts on that, Eric?
Absolutely, yeah. You got coal and wood fire. That's also could be issues with landlords and everything. Roy said something very interesting today that I think applies to barbecue to all of you that have restaurants out there. You got to watch the front door, the back door, and your trash can. And I think that's a very, very wise advice that we've heard from him that apply to all of you out there that want to be in the business or are in the business. Because especially in the barbecue, because we talk food costs. Robin, tell us about some of the food cost ideas that he's talking about.
Well, for any restaurant, the reality is that the most costly items on the menu are those protein items. So think about barbecue. It's protein, 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 even though we're seeing more things smoked. So you can't just order up barbecue just in time the way you would make a smoothie if you've got all the elements. You've got to have the right amount of proteins on hand for the service level. And if you're smart, you figure out how to integrate those into other dishes on the menu. So, for example, your beans on Tuesday might be made with the leftover brisket from Monday in order to give it that rich flavor from the meat, or you put a daily taco on the menu, and you can change that. So if you have extra smoked chicken, it becomes a smoked chicken taco. If you have extra pork, then it becomes a pork taco. But you figure out how to be very, very creative relative to those proteins and the amounts on hand to control those food costs, because they can get away in a hurry.
Absolutely. This is a true story. I've worked a few years back with a barbecue restaurant. There was many, many units. This was the #1 unit in sales in the company. And we go over there, and the guy had to sell his restaurant, and he was moving out of state, so I went over there, and he says, I'm not making any money. I'm not making money. And I look at everything on this P&L, and he wasn't sure what it was. And so we started drilling down. I couldn't quite figure it out. And I said, well, have you cost every item? He was selling plates of ribs, which was the #1 most expensive thing on the menu. What turns out, when we cost per plate, he was actually losing almost $1 per plate that he was selling. Can
Wow.
you imagine that?
Well, yeah, and that comes down to things like the dollar menu, because the reality is you see some of those things happen all the time. The most popular item on the menu may be a loss leader, and you've got to be careful about that because it can sink your entire menu unless they are ordering high profit items along with it. So, and I found it interesting because barbecue is not the same everywhere. Because to me, one of the big challenges would be, as a restaurant operator, how do you make your barbecue restaurant stand out? How do you differentiate your concept among all of those that are out there?
Yeah, and you have to do this, like Roy said, before they get to your door. Your food, he said today, your food is not that relevant to the success of your restaurant. That's very critical. I mean,
well, it's a given that it has to be right. It's certainly not irrelevant, but it's a given that it has got to be right. That's just step number one. So assuming that it's right, then step number two is drive the people in.
Correct. How do you do this? You have to go outside. You have to have a marketing idea. You have to be able to share with people. People could say, well, I'm a low country based barbecue. Yeah, that's a mustard based barbecue. Tastes good if you've been there, done that. But if nobody knows about that, how do you explain that and sell that before they walk into your door? Or if you're in North Carolina coastal region, it's a vinegar based barbecue. I mean, there are so many different things. Jordan today at Smoke Ring. I know we've been there, Robin. They have a white barbecue sauce. They have a smoky barbecue sauce. They have a spicy barbecue sauce. I mean, but until you get there, how does he get you into the door? That's what you have to ask yourself, and that applies to about every restaurant, Robin.
For sure. And if you have been toying with the idea of getting into the barbecue business and you don't want to start out from scratch, where do you go? Well, you know the answer to that if you've been listening to our show. WeSellRestaurants.com. We have all of our listings online. And just to give you a sense of some of the barbecue restaurants out there for sale, Ken in our South Florida office just listed a barbecue restaurant that serves pulled pork, ribs, chicken, brisket, and homemade sides 7 days a week. This one's in Pompano Beach, Florida. They have that Southern Pride indoor barbecue smoker. That's kind of the gold standard in the industry, and it's on the market for just under $250,000. That's a good price.
Yes, and Robin, I know I share a little bit of my culinary skills today, which are not very, very good. But if I still would want to be in the barbecue business, for those of you who says, I love barbecue, don't know how to cook it, we got an answer for you. There's actually some very successful barbecue franchises out there that they have the recipe, they have the cooking equipment, everything is set for you. All you have to do is execute, and you can be a very successful barbecue restaurant owner. And for that matter of fact, we have some restaurant barbecue franchise for sale in the Georgia area and in some in Florida area as well, as low as $49,000, which initially, if you would build this restaurant from scratch, it would cost you in excess of $400,000. That is a lot of money. So this is a great opportunity for you to get into business, deepen your knowledge, and be a successful barbecue restaurant owner.
And those are franchise resales where they're up and going, which is an area that we really specialize in as restaurant brokers. So what is the brand on those franchise barbecue locations that are for sale?
We have some Dickey's Barbecue. We have some Woody's Barbecue, Robin.
Woody's and Dickey's. Now, I think Dickey's is the largest barbecue franchise chain in the nation, aren't they?
I believe they are. They're headquartered out of Texas. I believe they have over 600 locations nationwide as we speak.
Wow. And others, because many things that you will find on our website would be a space that's already open and operating. It may have two vent hoods already, or it may already have a smoker in place, or somewhere where you could actually go ahead, prepare those proteins in your very special and unique way, pull in those amazing sides, do as Roy suggested, manage the front door, the back door, as well as the garbage can, and then pull off a very, very successful restaurant.
And do your research. I mean, Roy's Barbecue, the National Barbecue Association, had great research. They have a 3-day course that they offer for you, like a crash course before you get in the restaurant business. I don't know what the cost is on this, but it's definitely less than buying a restaurant. Go and educate yourself. Build a team of people. There's so many people out there like Roy and like Jordan. If you go by Smoke Ring and Jordan happens to be there, if you want to talk barbecue with him, it'll take 20 minutes to talk to you about the barbecue business. And go and ask questions to people who have been there and done that. That will help you getting started on the right foot.
And that's the reality of the restaurant business. It is a very caring and open community where people will share their knowledge. And speaking of knowledge, remember you can find plenty of that online at WeSellRestaurants.com. If you're listening to our show today, remember to take a moment and like us on Facebook at facebook.com/WeSellRestaurants. We're out of time for today, but this is Eric and Robin Gagnon from We Sell Restaurants. We are your industry leader and source for information. And remember, our name says it all. We Sell Restaurants.